Hello, so I was having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to do my presentation manually and hope I get it going on time. Alright, so today I'm going to share with you everything I've learned about a state I would love to visit someday, Alaska, also known by its nickname, the Last Frontier. The name Alaska comes from the Aleut word meaning Great Land. It's a fitting name as it is the largest state by area by a long shot. Alaska became the 49th state of the United States in 1959 and currently has a population of 737,000 people. While it is the largest, it is the third least populated state, and definitely the least populated state by square mile, clocking in at 1.3 people per square mile. Juneau is its state capital, which actually cannot be reached by car, only by boat or plane. Alaska has a reputation for being cold, and it's estimated that it has more than 100,000 glaciers. Here's a map featuring the 5 major regions of Alaska. It's bordered by Canada on the east, the Beaufort Sea and Arctic Ocean in the north, the Bering Sea in the west, and the Pacific Ocean and Gulf of Alaska in the south. Most of the population lives in South Central Alaska region in the city of Anchorage, whose population is nearly 90% greater than the next most populated city, which is the capital, Juneau. I'm just going to cover some of the main points about the environment for the sake of time. The map to the right shows the 4 different climatic zones: the Arctic, continental, transitional, and maritime. The average annual temperature range is pretty large since this is a huge state, but the all-time low is negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit recorded in 1971. Permafrost is a really important feature of the state since it covers almost 1/3 of it. Another interesting fact is that for 1/4 of the year, the sun does not set, and for another quarter, the sun doesn't rise. Some more of the environmental features. Alaska contains 375 million acres of land, and this includes 12 major rivers, thousands of lakes, hundreds of islands, 14 major mountain ranges, volcanic regions, and tons of wilderness. In this wilderness, wildlife is thriving. There are more than 50,000 black bears and 35,000 brown bears in this wilderness, along with wolves, moose, Dall sheep, caribou, you name it. You can even spot polar bears, beluga whales, and walruses. On top of this, more than half of the North America's bald eagles live in Alaska. This image here is of the Chugach Mountains, which is one of the main mountain ranges of Alaska. I've mapped out the timeline of Alaska's history and will just read you some of the highlights. It was 14,000 BC when the first people that we know of traveled to Alaska, but its official discovery was in 1741 by Vitus Bering, who also discovered the Bering Strait. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia for roughly 2 cents an acre. In 1888, people started coming to Alaska looking for gold, and later to claim public land as a homestead. In 1942, some of Alaska's islands were invaded by the Japanese in World War II, and just 17 years later, it became the 49th state. In 1968, Alaska's main industry began when oil was discovered and a pipeline was built, and in 1989, there was a huge spill by the Exxon oil tanker in the Prince William Sound. Alaska, since its first election, back when it was bought by the United States, has been a Republican-leaning state. Politically, the biggest issues they face are climate change and energy. Alaska's main economic provider is oil, and they are still choosing to use a cheaper energy rather than a smarter and cleaner alternative, even though they're one of the few states that sets up perfectly for alternative energy resources. Another issue they face begins with the divide that exists between natives and immigrants. 70% of the population is Caucasian and 15% native, and while native culture is a huge part of Alaskan history, the fundamental differences between the two groups has led to racism. Also, some of the native communities are still governing themselves rather than following the country's political systems. The politics of Alaska are very complex due to their dynamic. Now for the economy. There are 4 major parts of Alaska's economy. First, oil. 85% of the state budget is funded by oil. revenue, making the economy of Alaska dependent on oil prices. Next, fishing. Commercial fishing dominates the coast and southeastern Bering Sea. The main product is salmon, but crab and fish are also growing in importance. Next, tourism. Since commercial aviation, many visitors come from out of state to see the wildlife and hunt for game. Finally, timber. The wooded areas hold more than 100 million acres of timber. Lumber and pulp mills add to the economy in southeastern Alaska. Other regions are limited by glaciers and permafrost. Now for the culture. It's very specific and different than other states. The native influence is very important, as the natives make up 15% of Alaska's population, and their language and art has had a strong influence on the state's growth over time. Some activities you can only see in Alaska are dog sledding, also known as mushing. This began with Eskimos in the 15th century as a primary form of transportation, and the most famous race, Iditarod, is still something Alaskans all celebrate today. Here is an image from the BP World Art Ice Championship that Alaska holds every year. And here is an image, a beautiful image from the Sitka Whale Festival, another specific Alaskan celebration. Here are some examples of the beautiful native Alaskan art that gets inspiration from some of its wildlife, including fish and whales, as you can see here. Now, one of the main issues that Alaska faces, the contemporary issues, is climate change. Global warming hits Alaska at full force, with the fastest warming rate of any state at twice the global average. This year, ice breakup is happening too soon and to what locals are used to. Frozen rivers have always been a means of transportation, and yet people are dying from falling through the ice. Alaskans are used to the cold, hard winters, and when the ice melts too soon, it impairs their transportation, industries, and hunting plans. Islands are also shrinking because of glacier melt. Water levels are rising. While it is an issue we do not see as strongly in Virginia, the signs are showing in Alaska, and we need to take action. Here is an image of all the broken sea ice in the Bering Sea, which usually stays solid until May, but is now breaking up in March. And here are my sources. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot about Alaska, and I'm sorry for going over time, and I hope this still comes out well as due to the technology. But I really just wanted to share everything I learned. Thank you.